Okay, welcome to the Governance Committee meeting on August 25th, 2020, 6 o'clock in the school board chambers. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. First item is approval of our meeting agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Next item up is the approval of the July 23rd, 2020 committee meeting minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes from the July 23rd meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to our old business, beginning with board professional development. I just wanted to update that I have sent out through Missy a date in September 23rd, a Wednesday, from 6 to 8 with Charlene Green. Roxana was nice enough to invite me to attend a professional development that she did for staff leadership, and I stayed after class, if you will, and got a chance to talk to her one-on-one. She was very excited about the opportunity to work with our board on some things that she even brought up, some topics that she was interested in. So I've gone ahead and reserved her for that day. I've only heard a challenge with it from Sarah, Dr. Chase, that for time. She would prefer a different date, but did I say 28th or 23rd? Whatever that Wednesday is.
Oh, okay. So 23rd.
23rd, thank you, 23rd, yeah. And so if there is, Holly, is that a date that works for you?
I think so. You said 6 to...
6 to 8, but I think we may have to move it 7 to 9 in order to accommodate Dr. Chase.
That works.
Okay, and I've sent text messages to Irene and Patricia to see if they would be available. So I'll get that firmed up. And then moving forward after that, our next board professional development is our Vsba Conference that's coming up in November. It's all virtual. So my thought, and Missy attached Exhibit B onto our agenda that has the information about the Vsba Conference coming up, beginning Wednesday, November 18th, running through Friday, November 20th. I know, normally people would take off of work and go to something like this, and it might not be something that's completely convenient for those of us that work outside the home, but maybe just getting some, hopefully we can get some people to participate in some of these. But one of the things that we did previously was have a meeting of the board and Dr. Kisner for dinner. And I would like to, as we'll have been through like half the semester of the, if you will, of the fall semester, at that point, I think it would be a really great opportunity for us to just do an informal dinner, and not discussing any business, but just go ahead with that tradition. I'd also like to approach, I've been reading a lot into Doug Eady's book, but I would also like to approach just for thought of even inviting your cabinet so that we get to know them a little bit more informally as they get to know us, if that would be fine with you. I just wanted to run that by you, though.
Where we going to dinner?
Yeah.
See if we can find a place that we can do that. That would be nice. It's on our thinking caps of what
Yeah.
we do.
Just, and if you need time to think about it, if that would work for you.
Well, I think they would like that, just.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, did you, now you're talking about the November for the VSBA?
Yeah.
Maybe the
Yeah,
18th
yeah, yeah.
or the 19th,
Yeah.
maybe we could do a polling of people and saying, do you have a preferred night, Wednesday versus Thursday?
Yeah.
And see, even with cabinet, where we get the most people, I mean, I think.
Yeah,
We
we're
have to
not
just
gonna
go with-
necessarily get 100%.
Which works best.
Yeah, but I think that,
Space there. Thursday might be
As long as a place that doesn't have in their title cafeteria.
oh, God, no.
Maybe we can get Mr. Williams to fix dinner for us.
Or, yeah, maybe we could get like the chefs at one of the high schools to make us a dinner or something. That'd be nice. But I just think it's a really good opportunity for us to just kind of have, time to, we're coming into budget season. We'll have gone through a big wave of the first part of the year and everything. I think it's a good time for us to just sit back and just be
Rest on our laurels, yeah.
a little bit, just for a second, just for one night, then back to work.
We could also throw out as a community opportunity, I know it's usually Thursday nights and some Tuesday nights, which I know is hard for us. That's when, Tim White and them do the food security cookout. Maybe we could just get his
But will he
list.
be running it by then? Because remember, he said he was gonna try to extend.
I haven't seen him or reached out to him since we last saw him. Maybe we can, if Sandra can maybe reach out to him and see if he's doing any events in Stafford, food security?
Oh, okay, yeah.
He's got a.
He's definitely doing
He
something.
usually has his website and stuff, but he may be able to just send,
Yeah.
because that might be, like we did, of course, our Head Start one got canceled,
I
and that's a
know.
really fun one. But maybe something as a team and just letting people know, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe that might be, nice. If I think about it, I'll put it as a Tim, but, maybe Sandra could be my backup, Dr. Kisser, too. I'll try to remember.
So, and that was just me trying to think ahead for September, going into November, trying to firm that up
Yeah.
for our board development, if you will. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add or ask?
No, I think that'd be great. Right,
Dr. Kisner?
No, it's good.
Okay.
But you didn't actually state the date that you were thinking.
We were looking at November 18th or November 19th to
Okay,
pull.
thank you. That's what I thought.
Just using the VSBA dates that we would ordinarily meet anyway.
So I make sure I don't do like a parent advisory or something. Okay, very good, thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right. So the next item of business is the superintendent and clerk's performance evaluations. I know with the coming of the school and everything changing, I was wondering if we wouldn't want to pull the board and try to get like a narrowed down, if there's a week that you think would work, Holly?
Yeah, since we had sort of a conflict from, before, so I thought after we got, probably today or tomorrow, we start to pull the board too of availability. I think everybody's sort of,
Ready?
we're putting out many fires in their own homes and other things.
Oh,
so
yeah.
They needed that, so we'll get that out there again.
Okay, cool.
It hasn't fallen off, it was just everybody, I think, needed a
Yeah.
breather.
So we'll be looking for that then in the next couple days to put out a more precise time when we can sit down and work through some stuff. And the next part is the structure and streaming of standing committees. So I've been doing some reading on this as well, and originally what was proposed was having, if you're following Doug Eady's model, was you have the entire board, and then underneath the board is governance, and the head of governance is also the board chair. Who else serves on governance is the heads of the other committees, is how the flow goes. So in looking at that, I was trying to see, again, the whole idea, I've spoken with some others about, our board development, about trying to work a little more efficiently, making sure that we aren't on just the receiving end of information, but that we're involved with information in a way that helps our board meetings run a little more smoothly, and in partnership with Dr. Kisner. And so 3 different committees came up, but the recommendation is to have these 3 subcommittees if you're a board of more than 7. So if you're a board of 7, they recommend you take these 3 and consolidate them to 2. And that way, it's the board chair at the governance committee and the 2 committee chairs that meet together as governance that help get the flow of the board meeting. That's the general idea of it.
Yeah, I wasn't, sorry.
No, go ahead.
You know, because I was looking at this, and
Yeah.
I was thinking about it, and I was thinking it would be nice if we could have it implemented before we do the next changing of the boards.
Yeah,
But if the governance committee consisted of the chair and the chairs of each of the other 3, I didn't see that that would be much of a conflict, because most of the time we're wearing more than one hat anyway.
yeah,
And that way, the flow of information would be consistent, but I also think it would give us better control over our decision-making along the other categories, because the others are so disparate. I mean, strategic operations and planning, performance, and monitoring, and external relations. And some of these don't even have to meet like all the time.
No.
Like, you know, so it seemed to me that we could easily create those 3 umbrella groups, and then the chairs of those groups would automatically meet with the chair of the board, and then,
yeah.
I personally think that would work, and I like the idea, and then categorizing the roles of each of those 3 committees more succinctly, so that we can maybe stay on target better for,
Right.
we don't have COVID anymore, that would be nice. Let's start working on normal problems, like, you know,
What's
but,
that? I'm so
yeah,
out
I
of
know,
touch.
I know.
So one of the things that Missy put on here for us to you remember is that we have the board's position regarding formation of standing committees and defining special committees. So we need to make sure that we can either amend or make sure that we talk about this as part of our next meeting going forward too, if we can discuss and kind of vet out. The three committees, as Dr. Warner explained, was the Strategic and Operational Planning, Performance Monitoring, Audit Committee, and External Stakeholders. I think in starting with the Strategic and Operational Committee, this really kind of umbrellas our FAB meeting already, but they help, obviously, in organizing our work sessions on the budget, working with Dr. Kisner and Chris to try to make sure that, you know, as you currently do with your FAB meeting, but it would just be more encompassed as opposed to straight budget. There would be also developing planning priorities, which is, I think, somewhat similar to what you'd all do anyway.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to decide, one of the things I think we do if we had to amend the charters for these committees is that, you know, under strategic operational plans, there would be FAB, there would be buildings and maintenance, and I thought maybe a third silo for that might be challenges and issues that come up. And then, although that could actually be put into performance and monitoring, because certainly there are issues that I think as a board we're trying to address in the school with equity, maybe with, you know, really trying to address systemic racism within our schools, and issues that are big, multi-faceted, layered issues that we need to really kind of start creating a strategic plan for. And I know Dr. Kisner's worked really hard on equity, but I think that if we have this as part of our silos, part of our functional strategy, then I think it makes us easier to address them.
Yeah.
Let me just make a comment.
Go ahead.
And I'm not sure if I'll even express it correctly. So sometimes I feel like we have a meeting, it's mainly FAB, and then the board meeting, we're just having that FAB meeting over again, that the FAB has become like, it's gone beyond just, in my judgment, and I would have to tell you, staff also, gone beyond, you know, I don't know what the original intent was, because I wasn't here when it was designed, but I think it may be based on its title, that it was finance-related issues. And then we have a board meeting, and then the agenda looks so similar, and then we just repeat what we just did. And I guess I think what the book is really sharing is that and I think this is what you started off by saying, is that if our committee structure works really well, our meetings should be briefer and right to the point, because it's not just putting those agenda items on, so I think it will take.
Necessarily for a broader discussion, because all the details have sort of been hammered.
Yeah. And there would and I don't know if those three committees, which committee would do it. I think right now the committee that seems appropriate would be this one, is if we could look at, I know Ms. Habs and I have spoken about this, if actually the agenda for the regular school board meetings, because there it also seems at times a little confusing and redundant, like we have information, then action, sometimes we take information, we want to bring it to action, and then sometimes people say, I didn't get a chance to really read it when it was on information, so now I want to delay the action. So it just seems like we might be making more work for ourselves, and that's just something I offer as an observation now, being here for 2 years. It's been relatively consistent in that arena.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons I think that if the chairs of each of the boards work directly with the chair of the board, the committees work with the board, then nothing goes on the agenda unless we've got a recommendation that the whole board
Yeah,
needs
that's
to
what he said
consider.
to me, too.
Because I think that's one of the problems, is that we get presented something at FAB, and then no conclusion was reached, and then it gets presented to the board because a decision needs to be made. I think that if something goes on the agenda, there should be a clear recommendation, and any additional information should have already been gleaned by whatever committee is responsible for it. Because I think that would simplify and streamline everything and make it work much more efficiently.
And there may be times, and this happens across the street, almost every member is at the FAB meeting on certain big issues, that they kind of commit, because, I mean, I've been at a FAB meeting, I'm like, wow, it's really crowded in here, like on something that's huge or something really,
But they don't participate in conversation, they participate in just listening. Is that correct?
most of the time, I
Okay.
will tell you. But at least they've been there to hear it. Now, that doesn't, always work, but I would say there may be every once in a while some issues that just, that are on there. But, there's a lot of the things that are recommended out of committee. And I think what's going to be the challenge, but once we get the timing to work, allowing enough time for it to be on there, the committees are gonna have to meet like almost a week in advance of the meeting, just because if it goes from, and, it just sometimes does happen, if it goes from 2 nights before and then it's automatically it's too quick for everything.
Yeah.
So it's really gonna be spending the time, and like you said, it can
Looking
be
at a
with the head of committee,
calendar.
sitting at the calendar and saying, okay, these are the, board meetings, or this is 1 month where we have 1 meeting. So everybody's meetings have to happen before this date.
Oh, good idea.
Just sort of like how staff, I know that Missy reaches out to staff to put things on the agenda. She kind of has a deadline, sort of putting the committees on a similar deadline, if not maybe a few days earlier. I mean, Dr. Kitt, it's going to be and sometimes there are going to be emergency things. I mean, I'm certainly not taking that from staff. However, I think that with good planning, if we can, and timing, it'll help, I think, streamline the meeting too, with the recommendations. So.
Yeah, I mean, those decisions aren't being made, it's just that this way we at least have a recommendation. We know something's ready to be presented to the board and ready to be voted on. And, we've reached a consensus about it. I think the exclusion to that was the CARES Act, just because there were so many things that were being discussed. I think that we didn't have a specific recommendation, and then, so I can see where that would work much more effectively.
Even if it's streamlined 60% of the meeting, it's never gonna be 100%, and it
Yeah.
shouldn't be, because I know
Things
that
come up.
Dr. Kisner and staff, there's gonna be something that we just either have to deal with or we need to hear about. I think the other thing is getting a pulse from the board of how we receive information, items that we may need to hear or the public needs to hear, how we want to do that. Do we want to do those once a month? Do we want to do them in a work session? I'm just trying to for me, trying to figure that out, and I don't have a recommendation. It would just be interesting to think about how we want to do that as a board. And I would want to have board input on that, of what's expected. But I think there are ways that we can do that, and it's, going to be very much driven by the, how the committees want to bring that information and how much they're going to own something, and then, and I think they will.
Right, and I think that's one advantage to have the governance committee chaired by the chair, because then everything funnels directly there, so there's no redundancy in the agenda. It's just, everything that's on there is got a purpose.
And also, there's the added bonus that there's a conversation, while the chairman of the other committees are meeting with the chairman, she's also having conversations with the superintendent and can see there's consistency here, there's inconsistency here, this is a heavier matter on one side versus the other, or that sort of thing as well. So, the one thing that I would say about the Strategic and Operational Planning Committee is that, kind of one of the things that I saw was the list of setting up the budget calendar, which is kind of what you already have. So it's another calendar, because some of it is ours, but some of it is what the supervisors are dictating to us for dates. So again, trying to marry up the calendars of, what the FAB deadlines are, and time to, and then back it up to when does the information need to be received, how and when does it come to the board. So it's almost like making sure you marry up your dates and your, and the work part of it.
I mean, I think this is something we can certainly bring as sort of recommended. I mean, there seemed to be some buy-in. I think let's get something that we can put together and we can, move it forward. But I think there's general consensus.
One of the things that I know, in the next committee was the performance monitoring, but they also were considered an audit committee. And so if we needed to, reduce one committee, we could also push audit up to strategic and operational. But the performance monitoring, Sarah, like I said, Dr. Chase had brought it up back when we were even discussing governance. And one of the things is you were talking about how often do we want information, and one of the ideas was considering doing quarterly performance reviews. And I guess, Dr. Kisner had even mentioned early on, I think it was after we received information about class sizes, I think it was after that, so you asked for this information, so what? What are you gonna do with it? What do you wanna do with it? Is there a goal with it? So I think, having some board direction, board goals that, of course, we share with Dr. Kisner as part of his evaluation, but also gives us guidance as to what we're looking for information. I just think having, just committees that are working but not having direction is kind of makes things a little awkward. So I think, but this is something that I think, if we want to look at, are we looking at, test scores, like how far are our kids behind? Is there a monetary situation that we need to tie to that to try to make better, or a service that we want to go after to try to help, these kids that have fallen a little further behind? Or, does Dr. Kisner have a recommendation of a way to handle that? But then there's obviously going to be a price tag with it, or a position attached to it, or something. So I think it's a really, especially now, and not as a judgment thing, but as a helpful thing, to try to come up with ways to monitor our performances. Where are we? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? What's important to us? I think is something that we should maybe sit with and think about.
One of the things I was thinking about performance monitoring and audit was, a lot of times things get voted on by the board, but then we don't follow up on it, because we kind of lose track of it in the new agenda and whatever's coming up next. And so I see that second committee might be something like that, at auditing and sort of figuring out what we've passed, what we've done, where do we stand on these things, and sort of keeping track of that for us, so that we can be on top of it, but I also see that, reports and monitoring, are we meeting our goals is part of that, and I can see that would be really beneficial for us.
I do want to just follow up a little bit what Susan was describing. So the class size report's a good example. It's remarkably labor intensive. Okay, I'm just telling you, I never do it, so you know that. But my staff spent a lot of time, and even, you know what happened last year, months it took. And then we presented, and, there's comments made,
Right.
but then we don't know what, like.
What do you want?
Yeah, like, how does that drive, because it's a representative of where we are today. It's not like predictive, like, it's not, and we're limited, honestly, based on, building capacity.
Right.
Budget, how many positions we could have. So what, and I don't have an answer, except I would like, when we have this conversation of what reports, is to give you to give us an opportunity to tell you, A, can we actually produce this? And B, if we could produce it, this is what it would take, because while people are producing it, then they're being taken away from something else. But at the same time, you have every right for asking reports to help you make decisions. So
But what
sometimes.
decision is based on that?
Right, so sometimes less is better, and to really know what we want to focus on, it would be, so our staff, I guess that's really what some of the reports, depending on what you're seeking, are trailing reports, and that may actually be something that's on the DOE website or something, but if we're looking for something, and again, I don't have a good example to provide you, but if we're looking for a trend,
So I'll just bring up an example that's
Yeah.
just in my mind. And so last year, one thing that stuck out to me was the number of staff and different high schools, or it mostly happened in the high schools, but different numbers of, if you had over a certain number of students, there was a stipend attached to it.
Yes.
And you said something, and it has stuck in my mind, not necessarily having to do with the class size report, but if we were getting a statistic of how many students does each teacher have or something, I would like to see those stipends go away because those teachers don't have that many kids, therefore.
Most schools don't pay that stipend.
And because they don't have that issue. And
Well, you're right about that. When I first learned that we had to do this, I'll be truthful, I never experienced it in my entire career.
Right.
So I doubted it. I said, there's no way. And then I talked to a lot of superintendents who also agreed with me to discover, yes, we are required to do it.
Right.
But most school systems are not in our position.
right.
Yeah. And
So I would like to find ways to get out of that.
Yes.
And so if I were to, so that's what I'm trying to say, is that's a budget statistic, that I would be interested in, and it came from how many students do our teachers teach?
And what disciplines are we struggling to fill
Science.
so that we can reduce those class sizes?
If I could give just some background a little bit on the class size report of where some of it came from, was initially, a colleague and I were very concerned, and we really wanted class size reduction because we were seeing high numbers. So we had that report put together, and it did have a budget impact. One of the years, we went with elementary first, and we hired 1 year 30, I don't know, it was something to say, we wanted by 1 or 2 students to reduce class size in elementary, and it was a true budget goal that year. I see Lisa go, yes, I remember. And so there was something, so that's what it was tied to. However, the other part is we were also at that time re-examining, or maybe dusting off, the staffing standards. So it was sort of part of a whole
Bigger picture.
piece
Yeah.
that I think we do need to look at. Now, I am going to be honest, with COVID and stuff, some of these usual reports, I think we do suspend. But I would be interested, Dr. Kizzer, for you, with COVID going, what are some reports we should be thinking about, because we need some different information based on this,
Yeah,
and I'm not asking for them tonight, but you know what I'm trying to
I think
say.
this is a year where we still have this conversation.
Yeah.
But I think there will be some reports that will be specific to this year, which we
Right.
hopefully won't ask for next year. I do want to say one other thing about the class size report, and that goes to the public reaction to it. So I always felt like we had to justify small class sizes. So you know, we're all talking about the paying people, and I get that large. But there's a lot of reasons why small class sizes are actually fine. You know, we're giving children a special class that they could benefit. So I always kind of felt like there was two parts to this story, like,
Of course.
you know, the reason you have these large class sizes is because these teachers only have 8 or 10 kids. Well, they may be doing a very advanced AP type class.
Right.
It may be a
Right.
class that, you know, a CTE class that a kid could benefit. So I
Right.
do think we need to, you know, maybe, I'll take a lot of this responsibility, explain it to the public better, because that would be sometimes what we hear from people is, yeah, the reason you got classes of 150, a teacher with 150 kids, because you got other teachers with 35 kids. But you
Right.
know what, those 35
Not
kids are
necessarily.
greatly benefiting, you know, and I don't know if anybody really 35, but you get my
Yes,
point,
yeah.
yeah.
There's a lot of factors that go into determining class size.
Yeah.
And it's not just, you know,
Yeah.
Right.
it's not just based on, you know, everybody's not taking the
Mhm.
same curriculum, and everybody needs, there's
Yeah.
different reasons to justify.
So I think if a committee like this would be really good to meet with Dr. Kisner and maybe even the chiefs to see, you know, they're hearing, you know, they got their feet on the ground and, you know, their ears are open to what's going on in the schools, to bring it forth to, and so it kind of, I think one will help tie into the other so that you can, again, like you were saying, choose the reports that are really going to help you make a decision, whether it be a budget decision, whether it be a policy decision, you know, whether it be even a decision that Dr. Kisner is like, wow, I didn't think about this, and now I've got this situation, let me, you know, make some adjustments. But it could, you know, again, using the different elements of school board members working along with Dr. Kisner and his advanced team is just to kind of helping to make sure that we have performance markers that we want to hit. Or, you know, like Holly said, the driver for the class size reports was because we were itching to get those class sizes down, elementary first, then I know it was supposed to go to middle, it never got there, but, you know, it could be that we see a way, you know, one of our ways out of this may be that we want to drive the class sizes down, and, you know, for class safety reasons, or for, because we're behind and we feel like smaller class sizes will help advance our, whatever. I don't know what, you know, those, but that could be something that could come out of working like this.
Where Susan was going there too, I think, and Dr. Kisner, I think just, this is kind of a thinking one. I want to say after COVID, and I don't know how else to call it, or somewhat after COVID. What?
Is there
what-
such a thing?
What, in some areas, do we need smaller classrooms? And I may not even, I'm not going to say class size, but smaller breakout,
Yeah,
how do we
additional
need to
special
react?
needs.
So like, okay, so.
The
one thing that-
recovery, I
and
mean,
I'll
I
just
hate to
give
say it, but that's.
So I was at Dixon Smith today, and a very nice teacher, I wish I could remember her name, but she is their tier 2, tier 3
Yeah.
teacher, okay? And she's been with them for a few years, and Mr. Batsky introduced me to her, we were having a good conversation. Well, her class sizes need to be small.
Right.
Okay, because she's working, obviously, with tier
Mhm.
2 is one thing, but tier 3, absolutely. So, so I guess, and I like the idea, you know, having the chiefs engage in this conversation,
Mhm.
because I think there's so many stories behind the numbers,
Mhm.
okay? And I don't, this was presented to me, but I can't tell you that I observed it myself, okay? Some of the class sizes may also be driven by the philosophy or the way schedules are made
Mhm.
at the school.
Yeah.
So it's not as clear as, like,
Right.
this is, you know,
Yep.
there are some factors that we can manipulate a little bit more if we wanted to, but I just know that I felt like for twice that I've been here that we presented it, that we had to like kind of talk softly about smaller class sizes, but there's good reasons when you have it.
And I think now is the time, or coming,
Yeah.
of saying, the school board, and please know, I'm not
Yes.
jumping into your finance area, but to me, a possible budget
Yeah.
priority is going to be, okay, pick the word, I'm gonna say recovery, but come up with, but I'm not even sure it's just tier 1 and tier 3. I think there's gonna be recovery across the board, and like I said, we'll come up with a better word, but from this type of learning that kids need to either be accelerated or whatever, and to go in as kind of a budget saying, we understand that there may be some challenges and things where kids need some gaps filled, however we want to say it, but it's a whole PR,
Yes.
back up with the numbers, and a budget priority. And like I said, I'm just picking this as one.
Yeah.
I think that's again where a report would be handy to generate, I'm just not sure exactly what that report would tell us.
And honestly, I think that it's one thing what we see as a priority, but then when we sit with chiefs and they're like, yeah, but the real story, it looks like that, but like you said, the backstory is, or the real problem is this. Something that we would miss, but it's nice to hear, oh, so if you, it's kind of like, you know, take care of the roots, you fix the fruit. So maybe the fruit is the part that we're looking at as being the problem, but it's not that. It's that we haven't nurtured a root in some way, and that's maybe the report that we need, that we didn't know.
And it may not even be, but it's also, for me, staffing.
Yeah,
That's the piece too, is it saying if recovery, and it may say, we may need more paraprofessional, we may need, you fill in the blank or something.
Sure.
But if we make that a whole tiered,
coaching or counseling.
right,
You know, and the gaps may be different at different grade levels too.
correct,
may
but
have to
see where
focus.
I'm trying to say, it's a whole strategy that when the school board picks some of its goals for 2021 for budget and everything else, we need to line up communication,
HR.
data, HR, and if it's all one part of something, because I can't imagine that every school board across the country isn't going to have something in their next year's budget of, I'm gonna keep saying recovery, but whatever word you want to use, I don't know, that's going to be not just a small group of students. I
No.
think it's gonna be a broad group of students, and how do we as a division feel like we're going to deliver that service? And I'm looking at you to answer that,
No, I mean, you raise a good-
how do we get to that?
Right, I mean, like last year, if somebody would have told us during the budget season that we were gonna have COVID-19, I would have.
Kept that resignation.
Yeah, I would have asked for more paraprofessionals, because right now,
Yeah.
as we open up these internet cafes, virtual cafes, well, obviously, we have to staff them with adults. So we're planning to use mainly paraprofessionals, and when we do that, then those paraprofessionals are now taken away from the larger class sizes and the small group breakout that they were going to do. So, you know, that's just an example where the programming, I think the programming should drive the staffing, not the staffing
Right.
driving the program.
Yeah,
But I think we're still
Yeah.
figuring out what this COVID staffing's gonna look
Y-
like,
Yeah,
because there's so
Yeah.
many unknowns that we're still juggling.
yeah.
but, so that's,
That's my big picture thought process on
Right.
that. So,
Yeah.
So I'm not telling you what I think one of the goals, but I'm
Giving a hint of what one of my thoughts for, because I just think everybody's gonna be having to look at that.
Absolutely. I agree.
But it's gonna be, there's a staff piece, a size of class piece, and let's break the
Well, there's a-
pieces
you
into
know,
its
There's
pieces.
levels of it too, because some students may just need, a little bit of recovery, lots, remediation,
and we just won't even know until we start bringing them in.
Until we've got
But we
them
may
in
look at
front of
summer
us.
school or summer learning.
Well,
As
you're
being
definitely
beefed
gonna see
up.
money in the budget for summer learning. I'm making the assumption that things are gonna get a lot better, and then we can bring children back. But again, just some of my thinking, yeah, I know, I should knock on wood, but you're gonna
As
see.
the universities are exiting. Go
I know.
ahead and make that prediction.
I'll stop
University's
there.
exiting,
Yeah.
Dr. Kisser says, no, we're coming back.
Of all those pieces, because I believe if we
We go to parents and those who care about learning and saying, we realize there is a recovery component to this for all students. We are going to be asking for more additional funding for some type of summer learning, and really just break it down and say, and we're gonna need this many more people to deliver, describe it, whatever, and boom, boom, boom. I think that's an attractive,
It's an
We
easy
know
to
what
get
we're saying.
behind
It's
motion.
it's certainly easy to explain, and
Yes.
it's
We need it
easy
easy to
for us
explain.
to justify.
Yes,
There's a reason for all these things, that we have to do these things to correct this. So I think that is an important, consideration, but I just don't know exactly what reports that we need and what information we need to set those goals and to create that budget goal.
That's frustrating.
does
And
that,
remember, it's a process, so.
Yes.
As we do it, we may discover this report's really good, this report's not as good as we thought, or it needs
Yeah.
to be amended to this. So it's not like we have to get it all done right away.
or that, well, sometimes when you make a report, like I know you've done this before, is that you'll start something and you'll say, gosh, the question I should have actually asked.
Yeah.
Or the information I should have actually asked, because stuff comes in and it brought up something else,
That
or,
leads to another question.
yeah. So, but I think something like this performance monitoring kind of, again,
I think especially with COVID right now,
Yeah.
it's really important, and it's something we may want to consider starting before.
Soon.
Like starting in January.
That's what I think the goal should be too.
Because I think that it's gonna be critical, because there are so many unknowns to what's going on with this, and what the students are gonna need, and what we may have to adjust in
Yeah.
order to accommodate those changes.
I agree. All right, and so the last group we can talk about is the external stakeholder relations. We already have a joint working group, and we also have a legislative committee. I would kind of gather both of those in there. And also even like Stafford Education Foundation. I think, you're something with preschool? Or
Well, we
early
have
childhood?
Head Start.
Head Start.
That's gonna be last.
Yeah, so even, something like that, trying to, bring in,
Thursday.
bring in some of that information. But basically, again, making sure communication, like Holly was talking about with the, messaging correctly, the things that we want the public to know or to get behind. Upholding an image that we want, we're charging forward, but, I think everyone's been, and of course, there's no one who has it down pat and, is flying high, but, with having, their plan of how to roll out, and I think everyone is all anxious about what's gonna happen, and then when they see something rolling out in the school, or hearing from an administrator or the school, they're like, oh, okay. And it's like this whole like uptight thing, and then all of a sudden they get to, something is revealed, and it, quiets them down for a little while.
A little while.
What's that?
A little while.
A little while, well, then the next thing comes up.
Honestly, everything is certainly not an impact that everything.
Sure.
And I think that the more we can be ahead of some of these things would be best.
Yeah, a great deal. So, and again, that's in making sure that as a board member, using us to help, if we can be a helpful servant, but giving opportunities, to speak to the public about things that are coming up, especially when it comes close to the budget, and trying, like Holly said, messaging really well and simply the things that we need, so that we are 100% supporting, a school mission. So I think that something in this, again, it helps us messaging when we work with our supervisors. It helps us when we're messaging with our legislative folks in the communities, anywhere. I think that it's a really good opportunity for us, and we need to. I think, we get beat up sometimes too, but I think that some of that comes because, our talking points are during meetings. We don't have another talking time where we can help and explain things, because we have to do things carefully sometimes on camera, but in person, we can help. I've taken many a phone call. I know Dr. Kisner too. Sometimes it's just easier not to write. It's easier to get them on the phone and just talk, because they can't misunderstand anything. They can't, they can interrupt you and ask you a question because you're going in a direction they didn't want you to go, and they want you to get back to this point, and so I think that is something that we can work towards. What do y'all think?
Yes.
Dr. Kisner? Okay.
Well, I
So-
think this also simplifies a lot of what we're doing, because you can combine some things under one category.
Well, and you see how,
And then it. and-
the budget and or the programs driving a budget, driving communication of it. So, yeah, it just definitely kind of makes us a little more succinct to what we're trying to accomplish.
So then we could add things like to the external stakeholders, you could add things like Head Start, you could add things like Fine Arts, you could add things like Parks and Rec. That could be a separate group, and then, different ones, different people can obviously fill those roles, but because their report wouldn't have to be constant, I mean, it would just be once in a while.
Because I would say, central office has been reorganized since I've been on the board several different times. And to me,
Yeah.
this is our way of reorganizing the board. And I
True.
think if we can get this approved by like November, with a November timeframe, latest December, I always try and avoid December as doing that, so that we start the year and people can start thinking about how to do it, and then have that structure, and it would almost be like a chart.
Yeah,
on
flow.
other- I think that would be
Well,
very.
I think
very-
it makes our jobs easier, too, because I think that a lot of times it's not clear exactly what our job is.
Yeah.
There's no job description for this, really.
I
No
think
prior
it-
training.
No, it was drinking from the fire hose,
What's the
didn't you know?
last sentence in the contract, Lisa? As duties assigned.
Other,
Other duties as assigned.
Voluntold.
well, when I met with Liza, I met with you like, what, 48 hours after you were elected, and I remember saying, drinking from the fire hose is a phrase you should get. I didn't really think it was going to be quite as fire hose, was as big as it was.
When we did the fire training with the cadets, and I got knocked on my butt like 2 or 3 times because I was thinking, okay, yeah, this is exactly what this year is like.
Just wanted to note something, the policy that Ms. C has on here, and I know Ms. Boatwright is here with this one, it talks about the standing committees of the board. Isn't EDOC actually a superintendent committee versus a board committee? We may want to just amend that at some point, because it has it's our committee, but I don't think any of us serve on it. And please note, it's not that I'm hitting on it, but I don't think that's one of our standing committees. I think it's probably a superintendent standing committee. So just something to note when we start mecking around with this. Just a note on that.
Okay.
When you get new business, I have one thing.
Okay, I'm at new business, go.
Okay, since we're talking about committees, advisory committees this year, thoughts? How do we want to handle that? How do we want to, Missy and I have been a little bit talking about it, but I sort of thought, I don't want to have the only input into it. I do think that we have energized some people to get involved. It's sort of the delivery model. Dr. Kisner, what are your thoughts? You and I haven't had a chance to.
Yeah, I tend to go with what you just stated. I think giving people a chance to participate, be involved, really, I think they value it.
Mhm.
And I think it just helps us. And then it helps us because we get we get feedback, and then it will help us when we need advocacy. So I would encourage us, I would encourage you guys to continue it, and then let them make a decision on
How they do it.
The challenge, I think, that's going to be there, and this is just me speaking, is it is going to be very dependent upon the staff liaison or the board member of energizing it and getting it together. So that may be just something we all want to talk about, because if we are identifying some people who have been silent for a long time, because they certainly haven't enjoyed getting my emails, probably, when I've said, I am so excited that I'm going to see you at the next 5 meetings. Hey, every PTO president, Lisa knows my speech, you come up and you say that the PTO should run it when I was at Margaret Brent, I'd say, excellent, I've got your email, you'll be in charge of this, our next meeting is, people ran from me. Okay, I'll just say, but you know what? every once in a while, the person didn't run. They ran right to you, and guess what? They became the next PTO president within 5 years. I think we're gonna have some of those people, and we don't wanna lose them. So it's, how do we do those Zoom meetings, or maybe we can have them here? I think we really wanna think about, I think it's helpful if they can meet together, but have the option for people to call in. You're just gonna need a good moderator. I mean, believe me, it wasn't me at the beginning of this, so, but I don't wanna lose people. So do we put out the applications? What kind of dates do we think? Maybe mid-September, and that the usual? I think we need to slide it a little bit.
Yeah, well, school is sliding, so I think it'll be helpful.
Right now, the date of the orientation meeting for the committees is September 21st, but
What do you think? Do you think we could still keep with
Is
it?
is that the PTO advisory or just the PTO meeting?
that's the school board's 7 advisories, the CIP advisory committee, the CTE advisory committee.
It's the advisory
school
committee
health
night, what they do in here, and then they break
Do
into their
you
groups?
have a meeting that night, you think?
No, I don't think so, but, I mean, one thing I was, just to give you,
And then we have a board meeting on the 22nd, right?
Correct.
the.
And then
Charlotte.
Charlene on the
Let me
23rd.
make sure we don't have I don't think we have a finance, well,
I
you would.
think that the 21st is not, at this point, it's almost to the point where it's not going to be feasible.
I think we should
A
bump
week
it.
later, could we do it the 28th?
Or even, I think if you're gonna move it, you should move it to October, and here's why. You have to, the board appoint the members first, and you either, you can do it on the 8th, September 8th, since you don't have enough time at this point to do that,
Right.
so you'll do it on the 22nd. So what you wanna do is have your meeting sometime after September 22nd,
No, why can't they appoint it on the 8th?
because I have to give the members several weeks to get their applications in. The board, last time I tried.
Oh, I thought you were talking about appointing the school board members.
Oh, no, no,
No,
no.
no, no.
We already.
We're already
appointed that.
appointed.
We all know our committees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, Missy, why don't you look at the dates, propose kind of a thing. I think then we should get it out there. I will get out the thank you letter to the prior members. I just want to have in that letter something of saying, I hope you will join us next year, and be able to put dates
Oh, right.
in those, if that makes sense.
Yes, in the letter, we normally do give them the date of the orientation meeting, the
Right.
deadline for date of their
Right.
application. We tell them when the board's gonna appoint them or consider appointing them.
So we are looking at October 1st, or for the meeting? Missy?
I think that's about.
It's a Thursday, the first Thursday.
If the board does the appointments on the 22nd, then do you wanna do, you couldn't do it on, did you wanna do it on a Monday or a Thursday?
That October 1st isn't bad. That gives that whole month for them to organize and get started.
I think October 1st, yeah.
That is a discipline committee meeting day.
Oh.
Well, this is advisory committee, so.
No, but the board members, all 7 board members have to be at the advisory.
They have, sometimes they've been there, sometimes they haven't. It's, it's really going to be, but
We can go ahead and schedule.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Because if some of us had to do discipline or something.
Well, discipline would start at 4 anyway, so we would be done.
Yeah.
I would think so.
Presumably,
Yes.
we would be done. So,
Hopefully we won't have it.
So shall I put a hold on October 1st?
Yes,
yes.
please.
Yes.
Don't we have a meeting with the PTO president, so that's something different?
That, we haven't scheduled that. That was
Oh, okay.
actually coming next.
Is that
I was
all of
gonna do
us?
that. Wait, I was gonna do that next.
Okay,
It's
so,
scheduled, it's on your budget calendars as
Oh,
September
okay.
15th.
September 15th.
Ooh,
Ooh, that's
it's early.
that's too
pretty early.
I know some of the schools haven't,
The reason that,
Yeah.
the reason that the board holds it then is because it's all about budget priorities. And the board is scheduled to adopt
yeah, I know,
their
but this is
priorities.
different this year.
I think we're gonna have to slide it, because I wanna give people a little bit more time.
I mean, I understand the rationale in the past.
Our budget priorities are for, have the budget calendar in front of me. Are we doing those October
13?
13th? Missy?
I believe that they're coming to the board for information the September 8th, and then for action, September 22nd.
Hmm.
So you put this meeting in the middle of those to get their input.
I think that's going to slide. Well, maybe I could be wrong.
Process.
I think, but I am going to defer because I would have picked potentially like
Remember, we-
October
When we
6th.
put this together, we thought we'd be in school August 10th.
Right.
Yeah, things
And
have-
also,
yeah.
Right.
We're married into the Board of Supervisors.
Yes.
So let me check with the FFC and
Mhm.
look at the budget calendar.
Sure. And then let's just
So-
chat.
And I'll maybe send Missy some dates
Okay.
that might work where we could finagle
Yep.
everything into the calendar.
Okay,
Okay.
that sounds good. All right.
And so what was your idea? You said you were getting to it next about the, I was asking, is the PTO everybody or is PTO?
PTO is usually, all 7 board members are
Okay.
there to hear. We have PTO presidents.
Do we do elementary, middle, and high, or is it everybody?
We do them everybody because then that's
Okay.
going to be 3 more meetings.
Right.
And it's, I mean,
Are we
if we
looking-
if we do it virtually, we can't, but I still think people like to be here.
I
That's what
remember
got
we did it at, my first year, we did it at North Stafford in their cafeteria.
So, well, we'll talk about the place,
Just gotta find a place where we could do 6 feet apart.
Right.
I mean, if we have to do it and divide among them, but what I found was useful when we had everybody there was seeing if there really were, everybody kind of agrees on X.
Like a repeating, I noticed, like, I would hear things repeated as, oh, everyone's having a bus transportation problem, or everyone's talking about, something else that's going well in their school, that sort of thing.
How many here it is? I think maybe 20.
We did it here because the board members sat in the middle right there, and people were in the
No.
steps, but we may not be able to do it that way. Another idea could be, except I think as we get into the fall, we're going to have work sessions probably before most meetings, but the other idea would be one night we do an elementary one as like the work session from 6 to 7, and kind of,
They do middle high school another night.
yeah, so that's the other idea I would have. It's just another idea that then board members don't have another night here, but you're coming at from
You-
6
a
to
little
7.
earlier.
It's
combining it.
easier to maybe break it into 2 and have smaller groups,
Mhm.
because we have to accommodate the issues with,
I mean, something just to
Social
think about.
distance.
I hold a lot of my evening meetings at Stafford Elementary School for proximity to this office.
Mhm.
So, their cafeteria or library, you could get more people
yeah,
spread
that
apart.
would be a good.
Or even like Colonial Forge, so somewhere central
Yes, yeah.
to, everybody north and south to come to Forge and maybe do it.
I was
either
thinking-
their library, or their cafeteria, or gymnasium, whatever.
Right. I was just thinking for the board members that if we were having
Yeah.
a meeting, depending on where we're having them,
And we
but
could
anyway,
even
something to
make-
think
we could-
about.
If that night we needed to do it there, we could do it there.
Well, it would be nice to just have one meeting.
Yeah.
That's for certain.
Right, but that's why I was saying if we
One
had to
night.
break it, I'm trying to see if I can combine it with something else. That's kind of what my thinking
Yeah.
is. So we'll let Missy and I'll look at a calendar and try and
Okay.
put some ideas out there. So that was my new business.
And did you have something else you wanted to add to new business?
Well, I don't think it's been an issue, but I'm just curious on your guys' part. So I asked, I knew the answer, but I asked Missy just to confirm it. The school board chair speaks for the school board. So sometimes we get an email that's written to the whole school board and me. Just so you know, I often get that email separately, so I get it twice. So I haven't seen an example, but I almost saw an example where, I'll just put it this way, that when somebody does that, when they write a question to the entire board, if a board member responds and another board member responds another way, it could potentially create confusion with that, because that person who's writing it thinks that that person is really speaking for the entire board. Because so we actually did have a situation last week. I'm kind of tiptoeing around the issue, but if, it's none of you guys, obviously, you're thinking, well, I didn't write, like, so,
I did, I wrote you a book.
so I did talk to that school board member, and I suggested, maybe say, thank you for your email, for sharing your concern, you know, if they wrote to you individually, then do go do
Oh,
whatever you
yeah,
wanna
yeah.
do. But because that individual who wrote, I know that another board member wrote something completely different than this board member.
Oh.
And the one board member, when one board member responds, that person was very happy, another one not as happy. And I just stated, I wrote to her, said, I believe that the school board is going to put this back on the agenda for further discussion. I just left it at that. So it's really not a big deal, but it's just, it reminds us that, well, Lisa reminded me
There's like an
that,
order of operation.
that I speak for the system, but you speak for the school board. But I'm not suggesting not to respond to that person.
Sure.
But it's just not, you know, whatever. I'm not sure if I'm being clear, but I think for the person who's reading it, if they get two board members saying two different things, because I think they believe if one board member says it, then that's
True
it.
for all.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hard part about this list thing, because that's new since I've been on, you know, we didn't have that people had to individually write us. They had to work a little harder to write us. So they knew they were individually writing me. So when I would respond, that was, you know, to me. Because we can't do a reply all to let you all know what I would reply to this
Right,
person.
right.
So, you know, I still struggle with whether we should have that blanket list.
Yeah.
I would, if it was me, especially if you're getting spammed, or,
Yeah, I struggle with how to respond, and I generally will limit my responses to somebody who is in my district.
I try to, but then
But
you
you
have to really look for 'em.
sometimes don't know.
You have to look for it.
My only thing that I would offer you to consider by not having that list.
I know, it's,
Some of you might know, might be aware of things that others don't,
yeah.
and, you know.
Yeah.
I know, it's, and that's what I'm saying, there's,
Yeah.
it goes both ways, and maybe that's something
I mean, I
we
think
can talk about.
The one that, this one really wasn't, not a big issue. It's
Mm-hmm.
an issue that actually, you know, I kind of want to go off a little bit. It was about the board reconsidering sports and extracurricular activities.
Right.
Okay, that was the issue. I don't want to make a bigger issue of that, that
Right.
was the issue. And I really believe there are two board members that have shared with me that will go back on the agenda. They would like to be put on the agenda. But setting that aside, when we had the redistricting, I think it was really important that you all got the same information, because you were making a decision that was going to impact a lot of people.
And the same with the virtual versus the hybrid. I mean,
Yeah.
we had a lot of input on that. But then, of course, like you say, the spam was
Now,
fun.
what I will say this much, okay? And I gotta be careful how I say it. Some board members, I think, are really good when they do write back to the person. They let the whole board know
Right,
what they wrote.
right.
So.
Please share, yeah.
Again, I just raise it just so, you know, we're consistent with what I think the intent of the policy
Okay.
was. But that's really the only thing.
And that's something we can actually talk about too with communication as we all go forward anyway, so.
I think we've had an unprecedented amount of communication.
What?
So these norms that maybe existed before COVID.
I know, there's a lot of crickets right now. All right, so our next meeting, was there any other new business that anybody wanted to bring up? Okay. Our next meeting is September 17th at 5:30. This meeting is now adjourned.
And I don't think